Imagine the thunder of cannons, the crack of muskets, the screams of the fallen. You're a soldier wounded on a chaotic battlefield. Isn't coming, not for hours, maybe not for days. And when it finally arrives, the cure for your mangled leg is a searing, red-hot iron pressed into your open wound. This was the grim reality of warfare for centuries, a reality where the treatment was often more terrifying than the injury itself. The story of how we got from that nightmare to the modern miracle of a medical helicopter arriving in minutes isn't just a story about technology. It's a story of defiant surgeons, revolutionary ideas, and the unsung heroes who changed not just the rules of war, but the odds of survival for all of us. For most of history, the battlefield was a place where the wounded were left behind. There was no such thing as organized medical care. If a soldier fell, his survival depended on a friend dragging him from the Emode, or the simple luck of being on the winning side. Armies had no real systems for medical transport. Before the 18th century, moving the wounded was a haphazard, unpredictable mess. For those who did make it to a surgeon, the experience was a new kind of horror. Before we understood germs, infection was a death sentence to stop bleeding from a catastrophic wound or an amputation. The standard procedure was cauterization. Surgeons would heat irons in a fire until they glowed cherry red, and then press them into the flesh to seal the blood vessels. It was brutal, agonizing, and a lot of the time it didn't even work. But in the 16th century, one man started to question this barbaric practice. Ambroise Paré, a French army surgeon, had seen the horrors of cauterization up close. He developed a more humane and effective alternative, using ligatures or threads to tie off individual arteries. He also started using soothing wound dressings made from egg yolk, rose oil and turpentine instead of boiling oil. It was a simple yet profound shift in thinking, the first small step away from brute force, and towards a medicine of care and precision. Paré's work laid the foundation for a revolution, proving that a surgeon's job wasn't just to inflict more pain, but to actually heal. The real revolution in battlefield medicine would ignite 2 centuries later, during the world-shaking Napoleonic Wars. The man behind the change was a French surgeon named Dominique Jean Larrey, a man Napoleon himself would call the most virtuous man I have ever known, serving in the French army. Larrey was appalled by what he saw. Army regulations demanded that ambulances, which at the time were just slow, clunky wagons, had to stay miles behind the front lines. Wounded soldiers were often left to suffer for 24 hours or more before medical teams could even get to them. Larrey saw a huge disconnect between these useless, stationary wagons and the fast, mobile flying artillery that could reposition in a flash. That simple observation sparked a revolutionary idea. What if medical care could be as mobile as the artillery? What if it could fly to the front? He designed light horse-drawn carriages with good suspension, staffed by trained drivers and medics. He called them ambulances volantes, literally flying ambulances. For the first time, help could be brought directly to the wounded on the battlefield, and casualties could be evacuated in a hurry. But Larrey didn't stop there. Facing massive numbers of casualties, he created the concept of triage, prioritizing patients based on how severe their injuries were, not their rank or nationality. This was radical. Tradition dictated that high-ranking officers always got treated first. Larrey's system, which said the most critically wounded needed immediate care, is the foundation of emergency medicine today. He even treated enemy soldiers with the same care as his own, earning so much respect that at the Battle of Waterloo, the British commander, the Duke of Wellington, ordered his men not to fire in Larrey's direction. Hold your fire and ensure no harm comes to that medical tent. Their work is sacred, but they were the work of one brilliant man in one army. It would take another horrific conflict to turn his innovations into a system for everyone. That conflict was the American Civil War, and the man to do it was Dr. Jonathan Letterman. When Letterman became the medical director for the Union's Army of the Potomac, in 1862 he inherited a total disaster after the Second Battle of Manassas. It took over a week to get all the wounded off the field. Soldiers lay suffering for days from their wounds, from thirst from exposure. General George M.C. Clellan, horrified by the chaos, gave Letterman total authority to fix the broken system, building on Larrey's work. Letterman didn't just create ambulances. He created an entire integrated evacuation system, which became known as the Letterman Plan. First, he established a dedicated ambulance corps with trained men, whose only job was to be stretcher bearers and drivers. Second, he designed a tiered system of care that sounds incredibly familiar today. It began with a field dressing station, right on the battlefield for immediate first aid. From there, the ambulance corps would take a soldier to a field hospital, usually a nearby barn or house, for emergency surgery. Finally, once they were stable, the patient was moved to a large general hospital, far from the front for long-term recovery. This chain of evacuation created a seamless flow of care. Today, Jonathan Letterman is rightly called from the moment of injury to recovery, and is still the basis for military and civilian emergency response. Letterman's system was first truly tested at the Battle of Antietam, and proved its immense worth at Fredericksburg, where thousands of wounded were evacuated efficiently. His plan was so successful that in 1864, Congress made it the official system for all U.S. armies, the father of modern battlefield medicine. The systems built by Larry and Letterman were about to face their most horrifying test. World War I unleashed a scale of carnage the world had never imagined. Industrial weapons, machine guns, heavy artillery, chemical gas produced casualties in the tens of millions. The sheer number of wounded threatened to completely overwhelm every medical system, but the foundations laid in the century before held strong and were forced to mature at an incredible speed. World War I was the coming of age for modern military medicine. It was the first war with large-scale, systematically organized field hospitals and established evacuation procedures. The war also saw the widespread use of new tools, like antiseptics to fight infection, and better anesthesia to make surgery survivable. But the war also revealed a new kind of wound, one that wasn't physical. For the first time, doctors began to formally recognize the psychological trauma of industrial warfare, giving it the name shell shock. While their understanding of it was still in its infancy, it was the first crucial step toward acknowledging that a soldier's mind could be just as wounded as their body. The Great War was a crucible, and military medicine was forged in its fire, becoming a comprehensive and essential part of the military. If World War I was the crucible, the conflicts that followed ushered in a golden age of medical miracles. The pace of innovation went into overdrive. One of the biggest killers in any war had always been infection. In World War II, that changed with the mass deployment of two miracle drugs, penicillin and sulfur drugs. These antibiotics were a game changer, drastically cutting deaths from infected wounds. The war also saw the widespread use of blood transfusions and the creation of blood banks, which allowed surgeons to fight hemorrhagic shock on a massive scale. To deliver this advanced care even faster, surgical units were pushed closer to the front lines. These mobile army surgical hospitals, or MASH units, brought top-tier surgeons and equipment to within miles of the fight. Then during the Korean and Vietnam Wars, Larry's idea of a flying ambulance became a literal reality. The helicopter truly came of age. As the primary tool for medical evacuation, the iconic Bell Huey helicopters of the Vietnam War could lift casualties directly from the battlefield and fly them to a hospital, often in under an hour. This drastically shrank the time from injury to treatment, a critical window we now call the golden hour. During the Vietnam War, helicopters evacuated over 900,000 wounded troops for the first time. If you were wounded in combat, your odds of survival started to climb dramatically, a trend that continues today. That evolution continues. The conflicts in Iraq and Afghanistan have driven military medicine to achieve the highest battlefield survival rates in history. The case fatality rate for wounded soldiers in Iraq and Afghanistan fell by nearly half from the beginning of the conflicts to the end. This is thanks to innovations like advanced tourniquets, which every soldier now carries, hemostatic agents that can stop catastrophic bleeding in seconds, and massive C-17 aircraft transformed into flying intensive care units. But the most incredible part of this story is that the legacy of these battlefield medics isn't confined to the war zone. Their innovations have completely reshaped the civilian world. The modern paramedic, the triage system in every emergency room, trauma surgery, blood banking, and even telemedicine, all of it was pioneered or perfected by the military. Every time you see an ambulance race by, hear a medevac helicopter overhead, or witness the life-saving work in an air, you're seeing the direct legacy of those battlefield healers. This incredible journey of innovation, from red-hot irons to flying ambulances, shows how the desperate needs of war can lead to breakthroughs that benefit all of humanity. If you found this story of heroism and ingenuity as inspiring as we do, please hit that like button and subscribe for more hidden histories. Let us know in the comments, which of these medical innovations do you think was the most revolutionary? From a 16th century French surgeon who dared to use thread instead of a hot iron, to Dominique Jean Larry, who first imagined a flying ambulance, to Jonathan Letterman, who built the system that would save a nation. The story of military medicine is a story of progress against all odds. It's a testament to the healers who, when surrounded by the absolute worst of humanity, have consistently striven to bring out the very best. So the next time you hear the whirring blades of a helicopter, remember where it came from, a simple revolutionary idea on a bloody Napoleonic battlefield, an idea that has been saving lives ever since. If you enjoyed learning about military medicine, then you'll want to check out our next video on the US Army's future battlefield, featuring drone technology and the future of warfare. Or, for a deeper dive into military history, grab our first book in the Vietnam series, The Names We Carry, perfect for your next road trip. Remember folks, stay alert, stay free, and keep your head on a swivel. This is Combat Continuum. Thanks for watching.